making as much money as you can doesn't mean that you're keeping as much money as you can.
Money doesn't solve all of our problems, but money solves all of our money problems. It's to contextualize the gospel to people who are far from God and to create economic opportunity for my loved ones and other people that I believe in.
What's up, people? It's your boy Nash, and I'm back at it again with another subject. Yo, you know what it is? Money talk, church. Yeah, the gospel the missionaries brought to our part of the world 100 years ago is markedly different from the gospel that came many centuries earlier to their own people and continents. In the West, the result of the gospel began with personal salvation, but went further than that. It resulted in hospitals to treat the sick and hospices to take care of the dying. It resulted in the belief in human dignity and wealth, in universal education and abolition of slave trade and formation of global charities. In Africa, however, the gospel seems to mostly have been reduced to the message of personal salvation. Converts were taught to be experts in spiritual disciplines, prayer, reading the Bible, fasting, attending the services, but not how to bring God's kingdom influence to the world in which they work and live in. And results are certainly obvious, people. Africa is probably the most evangelized continent in the world, but at the same time it is the most known for poverty, diseases, violence, corruption, injustices, and chaos. I believe that Africa needs more followers of Jesus who understand their kingdom mandate to bring solutions to the marketplace where God has placed them. Don't you believe so? Now, the issue of prosperity and wealth is one that draws fire from all doctrinal positions among believers and has in many cases polarized sections of the church. Now, as a leader, we deal with people who spend most of their waking time either looking for money or worrying about it, either working for money or trying to get money to work for them. Now, poverty dehumanizes people and it gets them to lose their dignity and sense of worth. And we must break the poverty mentality in Africa. Don't you believe so? We need a wholesome understanding of prosperity and wealth creation. We Africans are blessed to inhabit the richest continent as far as natural resources are concerned, but housing the poorest people, it is unacceptable that we continue living in the shackles of poverty with so much resource around and in us. Now, one person once said, the word prosperity actually means towards hope. Now, this is where the gospel comes in, because it renews your mind and it also gives you that everlasting hope. Yeah. Now, think about that. Towards hope. Since the shackles of poverty have not led us towards hope, maybe ethical wealth creation isn't such a bad word at all. Don't you think so? So you know what's up, people? I got an interesting conversation between my boy Ruslan.
It's a breeze. It's a breeze, boy, I told you it's a breeze. Yo, it's a breeze, boy, I told you it's a breeze. Yo, it's a breeze, boy, I told you.
The man, KB, people, he's in the house.
All my friends were buying Louis. All we wanted was some Gucci. Keep our closet stocked with brands that we don't own a stock or two in. God bless the entrepreneur. Pastor taught me how to steward. Cooking bars, Martha Stewart. Business deals and flipping units. I was taught by Martin Luther. Get the bag but don't abuse it. Every dollar we accrue it belongs to God and not the jeweler. Jesus, help me do it. I will not be young and foolish. Cash rules, nothing around me, homie. Just Yeshua. Is it crazy thinking we get more than people than ourselves? Inheritance for my children, no rise it never fail. If my businesses go one day and my property don't sell, did it for the kingdom, serve the people, and my soul as well.
So let's just listen to this, and I know that actually you're gonna come with something out of it that is gonna change, that is gonna educate you about ethical wealth creation as a believer, so that you can be an influential person in the marketplace and in the kingdom. Let's get to it.
This, when we overemphasize and make everything about the ministry, we lose sight of we have to build out the ministry with good business practices. You said capitalism. I like to say ethical wealth building. Because the truth is, if you're a Christian and you're building a good business, the byproduct of that will be amazing ministry and the gospel being spread. Maybe literally and directly, like you get to preach through your platform, whether it's your podcast, you guys unpack biblical truth, whether it's you're at a show, or by proxy, which is what you kind of do through your merch line, right? Like, I don't think anybody's looking at a HGA Native Supply shirt and is like, oh, I got saved, I came to the Lord, man. I mean, maybe I can use anything, right? But it looks more like the Chick-fil-A model, right? It looks more like the Chick-fil-A model where people are experiencing commerce. The people who work there have economic opportunity. They're hearing the gospel, experiencing parts of the gospel, and then they go on, and those that want it can have leadership training and get built up and all that kind of stuff, right? So it kind of becomes that model. So isn't the answer, money doesn't solve all of our problems, but money solves all of our money problems, right? Ecclesiastes says, money answers all questions, according to Solomon Ecclesiastes. Is to contextualize the gospel to people who are far from God and to create economic opportunity for my loved ones and other people that I believe in, period. I think it's like, are our priorities off, and are we trying to come off pious by saying, oh, it's for the Lord, it's for the gospel? It's like, yeah, fam, and it's for my family. Like, my kids eat off of this. I'm trying to buy a house off of this. Like, I'm trying to put other people onto this. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on that. I know I just said a whole lot. Me and you both have these, like, streams of consciousness, and then it kind of leads into a question.
No, go ahead. I'll piggyback off you. So for us, we try to live off of basically these three mantras that we're constantly having redirect our path. So this came out of the Wesleyan tradition. So make as much money as you can, save as much.
No, he didn't. No, you said what? Hold on. You said what? You said make as much money as you can. Oh, goodness.
Make as much money as you can, save as much money as you can, and give as much money as you can. Okay. And the idea is, if you focus on any one of those and make it central, then your relationship with money begins to unravel and fall apart, and it becomes to control you. But money is, and I'm using the word money, but what I mean by money is just fruitfulness. I mean, you should try to be as fruitful as you can. Remember that Adam was put in the garden not as a pastor or a priest, but as a farmer. He was put there to work a regular job, because the institution that preceded every other institution was his working the ground with his hand, laboring. And then from that labor, it would have been unacceptable for Adam to do a bad job in the garden. So him to forsake his duties as a gardener and making sure that weeds are out of the way and that things are in place and organized, to not do that would be unfaithful. But his job, listen what God says to him: be fruitful and multiply, meaning do a lot more of this and do it well. So the idea, obviously that was in the context of family, but it extends to his very being, that we are to be fruitful multipliers. This is a concept throughout the Bible. This is what Proverbs talk about. The diligent hand multiplies, make it rich. You think about Ecclesiastics, about spreading your seeds wide. You think about the parable of the talents, which wasn't about entrepreneurship, but it still is a principle there that God faithfulness is about taking what you've gotten and being stewarding it is to be fruitful with it. And what you find is, if you're not working and being fruitful, then you're not actually fully realizing the sort of function of the image of God on your life, because that's a part of what it means to be made in the image. It's a functional thing. You're here to work and to cultivate and to push back. So anyways, that's more of a theological perspective. But I think that it's important for us to understand that it is very biblical when dudes like Martin Luther said that there is no there is these pastors over here that are preaching sermons, and you got to do this street sweeping the street. There is no difference between the two in heaven, because what the guy in the street is doing is sweeping God's road, then the guy in the pulpit is preaching the gospel to God's people. But it doesn't matter; they're both working for their God. Right. They are literally all in God's world with God's roles reporting to the Lord. So whether you're working, I hate to use slavery. I'm not going to use slavery as an analogy, even though I could. Even though I could, because Paul does. But you answer your master, no matter where you are. And I think that if you're working at Publix and you're packing groceries, you see that what you're doing is worship. As you are giving, God says he's a provider. How does he provide? Through baggers putting food into grocery bags and taking them out to the car, so on and so forth. All these things are merged into the Christian reality. It's, as Martin Luther calls, the hidden face of God, that God is present in the mundane stewardship. Right. And stewardship, if done well, is going to try to be as fruitful as possible. Now, going back to what I said about the 3 tiers, making as much money as you can doesn't mean that you're keeping as much money as you can. And that's where the other part comes in. That's when it gets ethical. Yeah. So if you start a company, are you robbing your employees of every single dime you possibly can? If things start to go sideways and you could make, I don't know, 10 grand less.
Sounding Marxist.
Sound like a socialist.
We get into that next. Keep going, because this is good.
This is why I call it redemptive capitalism, because I truly believe that it is better for all of us to suffer a little than for anybody to suffer a lot. Yeah. And I think about that. I think when bonuses are being meted out, I think about that as the owner. If I did good that year, we did amazing this year. Do I have to pocket all the surplus? Right. You know, if I, and then loving your neighbor as yourself, which is a function of here, what would I want to happen if I knew that the owner could do this to affect me? What would I want to happen there? I'm not saying that there's a one-size-fits-all sort of response, but the fact of the matter is you bring your Christian conviction into industry
and capitalism,
right?
Because I think that a lot of people, again, I think a lot of Christians have even adopted the concept of just being ruthless capitalists, right? That we do keep all of the surplus,
right?
And I think that, again, your business practices have to be guided by God's ethical heart, and it has to be guided by loving your neighbor as you love yourself. So you have to ask yourself, like you said, what would I want done for me if I was the worker? Right. What kind of conditions would I want to be in? What kind of conditions do I want to be in as a worker? What kind of things would I expect the company to do for me? Like, if I'm a worker and we have done great this year, not only have we done great this year and there's bonuses, do I, as the owner, pocket the surplus when the reason that we did great this year was because of what the workers did?
Right. Well, you sound like a straight Marxist.
So they can say
it's biblical,
but it's biblical. You know what I'm saying? So you have to. I think that, but we've learned capitalism not with a biblical ethic. We've learned ruthless capitalism. And I think that's this laissez-faire capitalism that doesn't have any restrictions, especially ethical restrictions. So I think for Christians it looks much different.
Yeah. You've heard it by yourself. You've heard it. And I know that you've been blessed. And people, I know there's something that you've actually gotten up from this about ethical wealth creation as a believer. Now, this is a continuing conversation that we will get to. But before we go to the next video, you might want to watch the other videos. Just hit the button and watch it. And I know that you'll get something from them. Yeah.
Okay, people, move along. Nothing to see here.